They built the stage for your downfall, but forgot you were the director the whole time. They thought they were slick. They studied you like a lab rat, mirrored your tone, copied your kindness, and moved their chess pieces with fake confidence. To them, you were predictable, the perfect target. But here's the part that eats them alive. You played along just long enough to let them think they were winning. Every fake smile, every breadcrumb they dropped, every accidental compliment, you clocked it. You didn't just see the trap, you memorized the pattern. And when the moment came, you didn't flinch, you let it collapse under its own weight. Here's the psychological truth they never saw coming. People who operate from manipulation always assume others are naive because they project their own emptiness onto everyone else. Studies show that narcissists genuinely believe their victims are too emotional to notice the setup, but they didn't account for one thing: awareness. Once a person learns to read behavior, manipulation becomes a silent comedy, and you, chosen one, turned their masterpiece of deceit into their public embarrassment. And thank you, chosen one. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing like and subscribe to help spread this message to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. You are part of a force that's changing the way this world sees energy, intention, and truth. Thank you for standing in it. Now let's talk about why their trap failed so beautifully. See, people like them don't build traps out of logic. They build them out of ego. They wanted control. They wanted to feed off your reaction, your confusion, your fall. But when you didn't break the way they expected, it shattered something deeper in them. They realized you weren't predictable anymore. You weren't operating from emotion. You were operating from awareness. And that's the scariest thing for someone who thrives on control. Because when awareness enters the room, manipulation stops working. They built this whole setup like a movie scene, every character rehearsed, every prop in place, every line timed to hit just right. But they forgot the one thing no actor can fake: energy. You can dress lies in politeness, you can mask deceit in empathy, but you can't hide your vibration. You felt it. You didn't need proof. You didn't need evidence. You just knew. That gut instinct that made you pause before replying, that chill that ran through your body when something felt off, that was your inner radar screaming, "This isn't real." And while they were celebrating your downfall, you were quietly upgrading your perception. Every trap you've ever survived made you sharper. Think about it. People who constantly face manipulation develop micro-awareness. That ability to read tone changes, delayed responses, fake laughter, and sudden interest out of nowhere. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. You learn to see beyond words, and that's why you walked out untouched. Now they're furious, not because you fought them, but because you didn't. They built a battlefield, and you refused to show up. They crafted chaos, and you chose calm. That's what truly destroys people like that. When they realize you won by doing nothing. Silence is the new revenge. Stillness is the loudest answer. When you don't react, they lose control over the narrative. And that's what kills them. Your peace became their punishment. Let's get real. Most people never recover from this kind of setup. The emotional bait, the fake concern, the twisted loyalty, it's all designed to drain you. But chosen ones have this weird resilience that confuses manipulators. They expect you to fall apart. Instead, you observe, you process, you grow quieter, stronger, more precise. You don't chase closure, you create it internally. And that's how they lost power over you. You're not paranoid, you're perceptive. You don't overthink, you oversee. There's a difference. Overthinking is fear-based, but overseeing is awareness-based. You started seeing patterns instead of people, energy instead of excuses. And when that switch happened, you became untouchable. They're furious because they can't study you anymore. You stopped being predictable, and they don't know what version of you they're dealing with now. The one who used to explain, defend, justify, gone. The one who used to internalize blame, buried. The new you observes in silence, responds strategically, and disappears when needed. That kind of power doesn't just scare enemies, it exposes them. You didn't just see through the trap, you made it your classroom. Every failed betrayal became a lesson in human psychology. Every fake friend became a mirror showing you who you'll never be. You learned that people don't destroy what they don't envy. And that's the truth that burns them most. They set the trap because they wanted to feel powerful, but your awareness turned their whole setup into their own humiliation. Now they're stuck replaying everything, wondering how you knew. That's the part that eats them alive. They can't figure out how you saw it coming. They think someone warned you. They think you got lucky. But no, it was just you being you. Observant, intuitive, calm. You're not mystical. You're just paying attention in a world where most people don't. So next time you sense a setup, don't panic. Smile. Let them think their performance is working, because when the curtain drops, the truth always steps into the light, and it never needs to raise its voice to be heard. They built a perfect trap, chosen one. But what they didn't know is that you're the architect of awareness, and no trap can contain a mind that already saw the blueprint. And thank you, Chosen One, for locking in and seeing through this message just like you saw through them. You already know what's coming next isn't just content, it's confirmation. Every part of this breakdown will feel like someone finally put your experience into words. If you've ever questioned your sanity after sensing a setup, this is where it all clicks. Drop a 444 in the comments if you're done second-guessing your instincts and ready to own the fact that you saw everything. And if you'd like to support this message, even the smallest gift keeps this mission alive, because exposing traps like these takes more than just time, it takes real energy. Whether it's a comment, a like, or a super thanks, it all helps push this truth further into the light. You're not just watching, you're part of the movement. And now, let's break this trap apart, step by step, from how they built it to how you silently destroyed it. If you really are who we know you are, the chosen one, you'll feel it in your bones to stay with this till the end. Let's begin. Number 1. They thought you were an easy target until you became their worst mistake. You underestimated me so badly. You actually trained me how to destroy you. They looked at your softness and saw an opening, a weak spot, an easy win. They told themselves you were too emotional, too forgiving, too gentle to ever catch on. You see, manipulators don't go after the loud or the loud-minded. They target the quiet ones, the ones who listen more than they speak, the ones with soft eyes and big hearts. They thought your silence was stupidity. But what they didn't realize is that your silence was surveillance. You were never asleep. You were watching everything, every fake smile, every staged compliment, every sudden interest in your life. You weren't clueless. You were collecting data. They kept performing, and you kept recording. You let them dig their own graves while they thought they were outsmarting you. Like a lion pretending to sleep while its prey gets comfortable, you waited until the perfect moment. Then you struck. Not with noise, but with precision. Now they're not just confused, they're haunted. Because the trap they set for you didn't just fail, it exposed them. Let's get one thing straight. Your empathy was never a weakness. It was a scanner, a lie detector, a spiritual X-ray machine. You weren't naive, you were just giving people the benefit of the doubt while analyzing their energy in real time. You picked up on the passive aggression, the guilt trips, the shifting tones. You heard what they didn't say. You felt what they tried to hide. They thought you were soft, but softness with awareness is lethal. That's what they never saw coming. And now they're mad. Not just because they got caught, but because they got caught by you. The one they mocked, the one they underestimated, the one they swore would never catch on. They're embarrassed, exposed, furious that you didn't just survive, you outsmarted them with the very traits they thought made you weak. They're asking themselves, how did we not see this coming? And the answer is simple, because ego makes you blind, arrogance makes you loud, and both make you overlook the quiet ones. That's the danger of targeting a chosen one. We evolve through betrayal. We grow teeth through silence, and we learn everything we need to know in the shadows you think we're lost in. They trained you without knowing it. Every fake moment sharpened your instincts. Every lie refined your intuition. Every manipulation built your emotional IQ. You didn't just walk away, you leveled up. You're not paranoid, you're not sensitive, you're sharp. They saw kindness and assumed ignorance, but kindness without awareness is innocence, and you lost that a long time ago. So now they're spinning, confused, panicking, because you're not giving them a reaction, you're not chasing, you're not explaining. That silence, that distance, that's your power, and it's driving them insane. They don't know what you're thinking, they don't know what you saw, and worst of all, they don't know what's coming next. Let them sit in that. They earned it. Number 2, you let them set the stage, then you made them perform their own downfall. The smartest revenge is letting a liar finish their speech, then replaying their words back as proof. They thought they had you on a string. They thought you were too quiet, too soft, too trusting to question what they were building behind the scenes. But you weren't confused. You were calculated, and instead of stepping in early and blowing your cover, you leaned back, observed. You let the show go on. You watched them put up the lights, arrange the props, rehearse the lines, and you waited until the curtain dropped, because real exposure needs a full performance. That's what burns them the most. You didn't stop them. You didn't interrupt. You didn't give them a chance to shift blame or deny the setup. You let them play the game until they ran out of moves. And now their whole plan is sitting in the open, tangled up in their own hands. Exposure isn't about shouting first. It's about letting people prove who they are with their own actions. Imagine this. Someone's digging a hole right in front of you, convinced you don't see it. Every day, deeper and deeper, smiling in your face while stacking the dirt behind them. You could stop them. You could scream, call them out, throw it all into chaos. But instead, you let them keep digging. Why? Because you knew the minute they thought they'd succeeded, that's when their mask would drop. And when they finally invited you to step forward, they fell into the pit they dug. All you had to do was nothing. And that's what shook them. They couldn't read you. They expected tears, arguments, drama. But you gave them stillness. They assumed you were clueless, unaware that your silence was the sound of strategy. You were building something too, but yours was internal. You were gathering facts, watching patterns, noting behavior. And when the mask finally slipped, there was no debate. They were exposed, not by accusation, but by their own actions. Never expose a snake mid-shed. Let it think it's safe, then catch it when it thinks it's invisible. This is what master manipulators never understand. Real intelligence isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to prove. It watches, it studies, it allows chaos to complete itself, because truth doesn't need force. It just needs time. And you gave them all the rope they needed. While they smiled in your face, you were taking mental screenshots. While they staged their kindness, you were listening to the tone behind the words. And when their trap finally revealed itself, you didn't scream, "Gotcha!" You just stepped back and let them trip on their own blueprint. Now they're scrambling, confused, panicking, wondering how it all fell apart when they did everything right. That's the irony. They really believed they were smarter than you. They thought your silence was stupidity. But silence isn't weakness. It's just delayed thunder. You don't have to set people up when you already know they'll self-destruct on schedule. Imagine being in a room where someone is carefully building a bomb, assuming you don't understand the wires. Every move they make is for show, exaggerated kindness, overcompensating interest, suspicious timing. They're laying it all out like a magician setting up for a trick. But you're 5 steps ahead. You're not stopping them, not warning them, not reacting. You're just letting them build, because you know that once it's done, they won't be able to hide their fingerprints anymore. That's how you flipped the setup. You turned their illusion into evidence. They can't twist it now. The trail is too clear. Every text, every fake gesture, every copied emotion, it's all there. And here's what really stings. They didn't just fail to trap you. They walked into the very snare they designed. That's why they're furious. That's why they're quiet now. Because once someone sees they've been seen, it changes everything. The silence before a betrayal is loud if you know how to listen. They underestimated how long you'd sit with discomfort. They thought you'd need instant validation, a fast fix, or some kind of reassurance. But you were willing to wait in silence, in confusion, in pain, just to get the full picture. You weren't desperate for the truth. You were prepared for it. And now that it's come, you're not even surprised. Just validated. Let's be honest, part of you always knew. You felt the weird energy. The timing didn't add up. Their interest came too quickly. Their compliments felt rehearsed. You weren't paranoid. You were perceptive. But instead of panicking, you watched it unfold. Like a detective who lets the suspect talk too much, you let them speak freely, knowing every word was just digging the hole deeper. And now they're the ones who feel trapped. Not because you exposed them publicly. You didn't need to. You didn't go loud. You went deep. That's what's killing them. You didn't give them a scene. You gave them silence. And in that silence, they were left alone with their own guilt, their own fear, their own unraveling. Sometimes the most brutal revenge is to do absolutely nothing and let them destroy themselves, wondering what you know. They're looking over their shoulder now, not because you said anything, but because you could. They're rereading messages, backtracking conversations, wondering when you caught on. They don't know which part exposed them. Was it the slip in their tone, the change in their patterns, the shift in your energy? They're haunted by the fact that you saw them the whole time and just never said a word. That's your power, chosen one. Not just the ability to see through masks, but the patience to let people keep wearing them until they can't anymore. You don't chase truth, you attract it. You don't force exposure, you allow it. And you don't seek revenge, because watching their illusion collapse is satisfying enough. And they'll never admit it, but deep down, they're scared of you now. Not in a physical way, but in a spiritual way, because once someone sees you're unshakable, once they realize their best manipulation couldn't break you, once they feel the mirror you held up to their soul, they know they can't ever lie to you again. Not successfully. You didn't just survive the setup, you used it. You turned the whole thing into fuel, into wisdom, into confirmation. And now you walk with receipts they can never erase. You didn't need to prove anything. You just had to watch. and let them reveal it all. That's what makes you dangerous now. You don't panic, you pause, you don't confront, you confirm, and you don't react. You record. That's not weakness, that's emotional mastery, and they will never, ever underestimate your silence again. Number 3, they came for the old you and got wrecked by the upgrade. They built a trap for your past, not realizing your evolution burned that version to ashes. They did their homework, but they studied the wrong textbook. Every move they made, every guilt trip, every strategic silence, every emotionally loaded sentence, it was all aimed at the version of you that no longer exists. They were banking on your old wounds, counting on your past patterns, assuming you'd fold the same way you used to. But what they didn't see coming was the upgrade. You see, the trap they designed, it was built for the person who used to over-explain, who tolerated fake peace, who stayed in rooms where respect was optional and apologies never came. They thought you were still that person, the one who would swallow pain just to keep the vibe smooth. But you're not a peacekeeper anymore. You're a truth wielder now. And truth doesn't bend for comfort. They tried to weaponize your empathy, dangle nostalgia like a leash, bait you with memories they thought still had power. But the truth is, you already grieved that version of yourself. You buried the old you in silence, rebuilt in private, and resurrected as someone they've never met. The new you doesn't flinch at guilt, doesn't chase closure, doesn't return to pain just because it's familiar. Imagine trying to unlock a door with a key that no longer fits. That's what they did when they tried you. They set a trap for a ghost, and ghosts don't bleed. You didn't just survive your past, you outgrew it. You learned your patterns, broke the loops, upgraded your boundaries, and chose discomfort over disrespect. So when they made their move, they triggered nothing. No reaction, no confusion, just a wall of stillness that screamed, "You're too late." And now they're sitting with their useless blueprints, wondering how their perfect plan collapsed. Simple, because they underestimated your healing, and once you heal, you become uncatchable. Number 4. They used your scars as weapons, but you turned every wound into armor. They thought they had ammunition, not realizing you already disarmed the bomb inside yourself. They went digging through your past like vultures looking for leftover pain to feed on. Every trauma you shared, every mistake you admitted, every insecurity you once whispered, they kept it all like bullets in their back pocket, waiting, planning, thinking that when the time came, they could fire those shots and watch you break. But what they didn't know is that you already walked through that fire and came out flame-proof. They were counting on the old triggers, the guilt, the shame, the spirals of self-blame you used to fall into. They wanted to press the same emotional buttons that once had you unraveling, but this time, nothing happened. Why? Because while they were preparing manipulation, you were preparing mastery. You studied yourself harder than they ever could, faced the dark corners, healed the cracks, and owned your story with no apologies. Imagine trying to blackmail someone with secrets they already made peace with. That's what their entire strategy was based on, outdated leverage. They expected chaos, you gave them calm. They expected you to cry, rage, defend, beg, but you just stood there, unbothered, unreadable, unbreakable. And that silence, that peace, that's what shattered them, because nothing terrifies a manipulator more than a person who is no longer controllable by their own pain. You didn't need revenge. You didn't even need to explain. Your energy alone told the truth. I know what you're trying to do, and it doesn't work here anymore. That's what crushed them, not being called out, not being exposed, but being ignored by the very person they thought they could still bend. You don't heal to prove them wrong. You heal so they can never use you against yourself again. They tried to turn your story into a weapon, but you reclaimed it as a shield. Now all they have is a playbook written for someone who no longer exists. And you walk forward, not with scars you hide, but with armor you earned. Number 5. You didn't just see the puppets, you exposed the whole stage. Once you trace the strings, the show stops being magic and starts looking pathetic. At first, it looked like a few people acting weird, a sudden shift in tone, strange coincidences, conversations that felt a little too rehearsed. But you're not the same person who takes things at face value anymore. You started connecting dots they didn't even know were visible. The timing, the patterns, the recycled tactics. It all pointed to something bigger. This wasn't just one person's betrayal. It was a coordinated dance, and every dancer thought they were leading. You saw through the choreography. They thought you'd focus on the noise, the gossip, the blame, the chaos. But you zoomed out. You realized someone was pulling strings, feeding narratives, planting seeds, and suddenly the whole illusion cracked. That's what happens when awareness enters the room. Manipulation loses its rhythm. You didn't just see who hurt you, you saw why they were sent. And that realization ended the entire performance. Imagine standing in an audience watching a puppet show, only to notice the shaky hands behind the curtain. You can't unsee it, and you can't fear it anymore. They wanted you emotionally hooked, distracted by faces, trapped in reactions. But you stopped reacting and started analyzing. Every move, every phrase, every coincidental encounter became data. And the more you watched, the more obvious it got. These people weren't strategists. They were pawns following emotional scripts written by someone with control issues, insecurity, or envy as their fuel. You didn't expose them with rage. You dismantled them with awareness. That's the part they'll never recover from, because once a chosen one identifies the source, the power dynamic collapses. Puppets lose their confidence once the audience sees the strings. You can't control someone who's no longer hypnotized by the performance. Now they're scrambling, confused why their usual tricks don't land. But you already flipped the script. You no longer play their game, you understand it. And once you understand manipulation, it stops working. Number 6. They rehearsed the lie, but you already knew the ending. When you know the script, every fake scene just confirms what you already suspected. They put on their best act, polished smiles, rehearsed sympathy, timed compliments, and picture-perfect timing. Everything about their performance was curated to look real, to feel sincere. But what they didn't know is that you already had the script. You've seen this play before, same lines, different actors. So you didn't interrupt, you didn't question, you just watched and waited. They were counting on your reaction, a breakdown, a desperate defense, but you gave them nothing, because truth doesn't need your help. It reveals itself on its own timeline, and you were never trying to fight the lie. You were studying it, documenting it, letting it walk straight into the spotlight and expose itself under the weight of its own performance. Imagine someone handing you a forged love letter, not realizing you wrote the original. That's what this was. By the time the final scene arrived, you were already gone, emotionally detached, spiritually sealed off, and mentally 10 steps ahead. They thought they were fooling you, but really, you were letting the evidence pile up. Their story fell apart before it ever reached the climax. You didn't owe them drama. You didn't owe them a reaction. Your silence was the closing statement, and that's what shredded them, because manipulators crave confusion. When you don't defend yourself, they're left performing to an empty theater. No applause, no audience, just a fading spotlight and the sound of their own lies echoing back at them. The greatest insult to a liar is your indifference to their script. You weren't part of their show. You were the observer, the one who walked away before the curtain dropped, the one who didn't need to call them out because reality did it for you. And now, the act is over. The mask is off, and the silence you left behind is louder than any final word they thought they'd get. Let them sit in that. You already knew the ending. Number 7. You let the snake slide in just to strike with surgical precision. I didn't miss the signs. I just let the snake get close enough to make sure it had no way out. They saw your calm and called it cowardice. They thought your silence meant submission, that your stillness was fear. But the truth? You were tracking every twitch, every fake gesture, every hiss hidden behind soft words. You weren't frozen. You were focused. Focused like a blade waiting for the perfect opening. And while they crept closer thinking you were asleep, you were mapping the strike zone. See, predators get cocky when they think you can't see them. They move louder, bolder, more confidently. That's exactly what you wanted. You needed them to feel safe, just long enough to reveal everything. Every lie, every motive, every hidden connection. You gave them space, not because you trusted them, but because you knew what was coming. Imagine watching a venomous snake slither closer, not because you're unaware, but because you're holding the machete behind your back. And when you finally moved, it wasn't chaos, it wasn't emotional, it was surgical, clean, final. One decision from you, one boundary, one truth, one exit, and their entire web collapsed. That's what shook them. It wasn't rage, it wasn't drama. It was the quiet, calculated cut of someone who had been awake the whole time. They thought they fooled you. What they didn't realize is that you were letting them hang themselves, slowly. And when the moment came, you didn't need to shout. You didn't need to justify. You just walked away and let the silence bleed truth. You don't kill the snake with noise. You kill it with timing. Now they're left choking on their own venom, not because you exposed them publicly, but because you ended it so calmly, so decisively, that it forced them to realize you saw it all. You were never blind, just patient, just sharp, just deadly in stillness. Number 8. They banked on your silence, but you gave them consequences instead. They thought your loyalty would cover their lies, not knowing your silence had an expiration date. They counted on your kindness like it was a contract. They thought you'd protect their reputation no matter what they did behind closed doors. They were so used to you absorbing damage, brushing it off, and swallowing truth just to keep the peace. But what they didn't know is that silence, when abused, turns into clarity. You stopped mistaking silence for maturity and started realizing that silence in the face of betrayal is protection for the enemy. You never wanted revenge. That's what separates you from them. You weren't trying to destroy their name, but once you saw the pattern, the disrespect, the lies, the entitlement, you knew protecting them would mean betraying yourself. You couldn't keep shielding people who would never take a bullet for you. That's when everything changed. Loyalty ended where self-respect began. Imagine holding up a crumbling wall for years, only to realize the people inside would have let it fall on you without blinking. They thought you'd take the fall quietly, smile through it, play nice, stay soft, but you outgrew the guilt. You woke up, and when you stood in your truth, calmly, firmly, without rage, it hit them harder than any scream ever could, because now they know you're no longer controllable. Guilt used to keep you quiet, but now truth keeps you free. They'll say you changed, that you flipped, but let's be honest, you didn't change. You just stopped choosing silence over self-respect. You stopped prioritizing their comfort over your own truth. And the most terrifying thing for a manipulator is when the person they silenced becomes the one who speaks with peace, not pettiness. Let them panic. You don't need to smear their name. The truth they tried to bury is now the only thing echoing when your name is mentioned. You didn't destroy their image. You simply stopped hiding what they built. And now, their lies can't breathe without your silence, and your silence is gone. Number 9. They tried to set you off, but you let them set themselves on fire. They wanted a reaction to blame you, but your calm turned their mask into a mirror. They were counting on the blow-up, the outburst, the breakdown. They needed it, not just to feel superior, but to spin the narrative in their favor. That's the trick, right? Push you hard enough, provoke you just enough, then stand back and act like the victim. Classic manipulation. They didn't want the truth. They wanted your reaction to bury the truth, but instead you gave them the one thing they couldn't handle: composure. You didn't flinch, you didn't scream, you didn't bite the bait, and that's what shattered them. Because when they couldn't provoke the chaos, they had to sit in the stillness, and in that stillness their lies got loud. Their contradictions came to the surface, their shaky tone, their fumbled justifications, their defensiveness, all of it exposed them without you having to lift a finger. Imagine handing someone a match, hoping they'll burn the bridge, but they just stare at you while the gas can in your hand starts leaking. You didn't need a meltdown to tell your side. Your piece did all the talking, and what people don't realize is, silence isn't always softness. Sometimes it's strategy. You chose not to react, not because you were weak, but because you already knew what they were trying to do. Weaponize your emotions to protect their reputation, but you've outgrown that game. You saw through the setup. You understood that whoever stays calm controls the narrative, so you held your line, and the more grounded you became, the more they fell apart. That's not just emotional intelligence, that's power. Your calm didn't just protect your image, it destroyed their illusion. Now they're the ones scrambling, stuttering, contradicting themselves in front of everyone. You didn't have to expose them. They exposed themselves trying to provoke you. That's what they'll never recover from. Not that you fought back, but that you didn't need to. Your stillness triggered their unraveling, and now everyone sees it. Number 10. They wrote you off, but the universe rewrote the whole script. They designed your downfall like a finale, not realizing the universe had you marked for a sequel they'd never survive. They thought they had the perfect plot twist, betrayal timed like a clock, lies lined up like dominoes, isolation served cold and calculated. They wanted the world to watch you crumble, to point at you, laugh, whisper, disappear. But here's what they never understood. Chosen ones don't collapse under pressure. We transform in it. The setup they designed wasn't the ending. It was the turning point. You didn't just survive the sabotage, you flipped it. While they were busy playing villains in a story they thought they controlled, the universe stepped in like a plot editor with a red pen and said, "Nah, this isn't how it ends." Suddenly, doors they tried to close on you cracked open again. People started questioning their version of the story. Truth had a strange way of resurfacing, not with a scream, but with undeniable timing. And it was loud. Imagine trying to trap someone in a scene and realizing they weren't the character, they were the author. They wanted the fire to consume you, but it refined you instead. The silence they forced on you gave birth to clarity. The loneliness they shoved you into became your sanctuary. And the same betrayal they thought would break you? It built your backbone. They expected your downfall to make them look bigger, but all it did was cast light on the desperation behind their moves, their entire plan. The manipulation, the exile, the performance didn't crown them as winners. It revealed them as frauds. You didn't need to expose them. Their obsession with control exposed itself. The harder they pushed for your ending, the more poetic your comeback became. Now you're not just back, you're better, elevated, unbothered, and untouchable. They don't know how you survived it all, how you came out glowing when they swore they dimmed your light forever. But that's the thing about universal justice. It's silent, it's precise, and it never loses track of the chosen. Number 11. You weren't sent to break, you were planted to expose. They thought you were collateral damage, but you were the surveillance camera they didn't know was rolling. They didn't just try to ruin you, they tried to erase you, strip your voice, your clarity, your sense of self. But what they never realized is, you weren't put in that situation to fall. You were sent there to see, to witness what no one else would have caught, to observe the snakes while they shed in plain sight, thinking no one noticed. Every lie, every shift in tone, every betrayal wasn't random. It was a system unraveling right in front of your eyes. And you? You were the evidence collector. You didn't fight dirty. You didn't sink to their level. You didn't even try to clap back, because you knew this wasn't about revenge. This was about recording. Every silence, every smirk, every setup was a red flag waving itself in your face, and you stood still, unmoved, watching it all like a storm through a window. They thought you were broken. What they didn't see was that you were documenting. Imagine thinking you're setting someone up, not knowing they're taking mental screenshots of your every move. You didn't walk away shattered. You walked away smarter, stronger, wiser, and the best part, you didn't need to prove anything. Your growth, your glow, your peace, that is the proof. You were protected the entire time, not by force, but by position. You were never supposed to blend in with the chaos. You were sent to observe it clearly, so you'd never be fooled again. And now, you're living, breathing proof that their scheme failed. You weren't buried. You were briefed. You didn't fall. You learned. And your ability to rise without retaliation is what truly exposes them. Because nothing haunts a liar more than the one who saw everything and chose healing over revenge. Number 12. You smiled through the setup, and it shattered their illusion of control. The calmest one in the room is usually the one holding the truth and the power. They designed the perfect trap, rehearsed every betrayal, and lined up the fall like clockwork. They expected the usual collapse, panic in your voice, fear in your eyes, a desperate scramble for answers. But instead, you smiled. Not a fake smile, not a mask. A real, quiet, all-knowing smile. The kind that says, I've seen enough, and I'm not afraid. That moment, that's what shook them to their core. Because manipulators need chaos to win. They thrive on your confusion, your overreaction, your desperation. But your peace? That was the plot twist they didn't prepare for. They were counting on emotional instability, and you gave them divine stillness. You weren't ignoring the trap. You saw it. You understood it. You watched it being set. And you smiled because you knew they weren't in control. You were. Imagine setting a fire for someone, only to watch them walk through it barefoot, unburned and unbothered. That smile wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was awareness. It was the subtle flex of someone who's been through worse and came out sharper. And that's what unhinged them. Because when someone can smile through betrayal, it forces everyone to question who really held the power all along. Your calmness dismantled their confidence. Your silence became thunder. That unbothered look on your face, it was a mirror, reflecting back every ounce of their insecurity, guilt, and fear. Because now they knew you weren't the victim. You were the witness, the one who didn't break, the one who let it happen, took mental notes, and still chose peace. You don't have to fight for revenge when your composure becomes the thing they can't explain or erase. Let them wonder why you didn't collapse. Let them obsess over how you knew. That smile haunts them now, because it confirmed everything they feared. You weren't blind, you were ready, and they never stood a chance. Number 13. You read the energy long before the knife came out. The body can lie, but energy always snitches first. They thought they were slick, smiling in your face, pretending nothing had changed. But you felt it. Before the lies came, before the silence hit, before the betrayal unfolded, the energy told the truth before their words ever could. The warmth disappeared. The tone got weird. The check-ins stopped feeling real. That familiar spark between souls? Gone. And you knew something was coming. You didn't need receipts. You didn't need screenshots. Your intuition already whispered, this connection is dying. Betrayal always starts energetically, always. Long before it shows up in action, it shows up in vibe, and most people ignore it. But not you. You watched, quietly. You began detaching, emotionally packing your bags without saying a word. So by the time the betrayal hit, the heartbreak, the lie, the shift, it didn't destroy you, because part of you had already left the room. Imagine watching a wave from a distance. You don't drown in it because you saw it forming. They wanted to shock you, to catch you off guard. But your soul was already steps ahead. You weren't confused. You were prepared. You were grieving while they were plotting, healing while they were smiling. That's the difference between chosen ones and the average person. We feel the unraveling before it happens. We don't just see betrayal, we sense it. We don't panic when the truth comes. We just nod and say, there it is. The gift of discernment isn't about paranoia, it's about peace through early clarity. That's why your reaction was so calm. You didn't explode, you didn't beg, you didn't even need closure, because your spirit gave you the answer long before they gave you the excuse. You had already made peace with their exit, already let go, already accepted the truth. So when the mask finally dropped, it didn't break you. It confirmed everything you already knew. Number 14. They bet everything on your breakdown and lost it all watching you rise. They didn't just fail to break you, they funded your glow-up with their obsession. They went all in on your collapse. Every move, every whisper, every alliance they formed behind your back was done with one goal in mind, your fall. They sacrificed their integrity, their peace, even their sanity, all to watch you lose. But what they saw instead, you standing, evolving, winning in silence. And that's what's eating them alive. They didn't just plan a betrayal, they orchestrated a downfall like a full-blown production, but instead of a breakdown, you gave them a breakthrough. You didn't shout, you didn't argue, you just stood still and let the weight of truth shatter every lie stacked against you. Now their stories are cracking, their fake alliances are ghosting them, the performance is over, and all they have left is the mirror and the haunting reality that you saw it all and still chose peace. Imagine plotting someone's burial and ending up watching their rebirth instead. They're furious, but not because you retaliated. You didn't have to. Their biggest punishment was watching you rise from the very pit they dug. And you didn't just survive, you leveled up. You outgrew the environment that tried to poison you. You became living proof that real power doesn't need revenge, it just keeps ascending. They can't sleep right. They can't look at you without being reminded of their failure. And that's the real justice, because nothing haunts a person more than realizing all their hate, all their effort, all their scheming ended up becoming the fertilizer for your growth. The trap didn't end you, it revealed you. They wanted to dim your light and ended up putting a spotlight on your strength. You didn't just escape their trap. You dismantled it with dignity. You exposed it by thriving. And now, they'll never forget the one they tried to destroy, because you're the walking proof that when you're chosen, protected by purpose and driven by truth, no setup, no betrayal, no lie can stop your rise. If this message hit home, chosen one, press that like button if you haven't already. It lets the world know you're still standing. And if you're not part of this family yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join the force. We're not just healing here, we're exposing, evolving, and rising together. Your growth is the proof their trap failed. And your presence here, it's power. Stay sharp, stay silent, and stay rising. This is just the beginning, and they have no idea what's coming next.